My brother calls me his princess, and transfers money to me as allowance. His wife to be misunderstands and thinks I'm his secret lover. She crashes my new apartment, which I've lovingly decorated with a group of friends and family. I can't believe you're someone's secret lover, when you're so young. I'll teach you a lesson on your parents' behalf. I'm going to spread your illicit relationship online, so your teachers and classmates will all know how shameless you are. They trash my new apartment and rip my clothes off. Then they make sure to get my student ID in the scene as they record me getting bullied. My brother rushes over his eyes, red and bloodshot. Have you guys lost your mind? How dare you bully my sister? It was the finals that week. I came to my brother's new home with a stack of textbooks, hoping to study hard in a quiet environment for the upcoming exams. I had just flipped open my book for a few minutes when someone knocked on the door rapidly. I assumed the plants I ordered were being delivered, so I opened the door without a second thought. Look everyone, this is the face of the mistress Claude has been seeing in secret. As soon as I opened the door, a phone on a selfie stick was practically shoved in my face by a short woman with heavy makeup behind her. Was a large crowd of people. Who are you? You must have the wrong door, I stated with a frown. Before I could finish, they barged in, pushing me inside along with them. You're the one Claude has been having an affair with, huh? She's not even that pretty. The group of women shot hostile glares at me, and I felt very apprehensive. A wave of unease washed over me. Why are you trespassing into private property? Please leave immediately, I shouted at them anxiously. I tried to grab my phone, but a tall woman with wavy hair snatched it away before I could reach it. Did you want to call for backup? Like I'd let you. She glared at me with a spiteful expression. Then she shrieked, how dare you try to steal my fiancé from me? You mistress, I'm going to teach you a lesson today. Before I could even process what she meant when she mentioned the words mistress and fiancé, I was slapped hard across the face. The force of the slap stunned me. Look at that innocent expression she's putting on. See how good she is at putting on a show. This is the type of woman always fall for, and have an affair with the woman who slapped me. Spat hatefully. She then massaged her palm and continued hurling accusations at me. Stop pretending. Don't try to deny that you know Claude. Can you swear to God that you're not his mistress? Claude Stark was my brother. Why did she keep claiming that I was his mistress? Every penny I spent was from the funds that my mother left for me. Yes, I know Claude. I'm his sister. I shot back angrily. No one had ever hit me before, so my anger flared up. I screamed at the crowd of unruly women. Now that you know that Claude is my brother, get out of here this instant. You shameless vixen. That's what all mistresses claim to be when they're exposed. The woman sneered, digging her nails into the side of my cheek that she had slapped. My eyes stung with tears from the pain, but I couldn't push her hand away. Julia, look at this place. It's so big and luxurious. Claude sure is generous to this fiction. One of the women commented. Julia, the name rang a bell. I pushed her hand away forcefully and covered my aching cheek. Are you Julia Durand, my brother's girlfriend? I asked upon hearing my words. The crowd grew even angrier. You know Julia is Claude's girlfriend, yet you still chose to come between them. Look at this shameless piece of work. Everyone, the short lady exclaimed, shoving her phone in my face again. I knew she was live streaming in my anger. I knocked her phone to the ground. Put away your phone. I'm not a mistress, Julia. Before I could finish, the woman who was live streaming kicked me in the stomach. I stumbled and doubled over in pain. I'm Claude's sister. I'm his real sister. I blurted, my voice strained with pain and anger, as I clutched my stomach. Everyone froze and looked at Julia. Does Claude have a sister? Julia's face fell as she answered, yes, she does have a sister. Could we have made a mistake? If we hit Claude's sister, we're done for. As the crowd of women started doubting themselves, a voice rang out. She's lying. She's not Claude's sister at all. The live streamer, Orla Brown, waved my student ID around, smugly. Take a look, everyone. The mistress is so cunning. Not only does she deny that she's a mistress after being caught, she's also lying by claiming to be the guy's sister. She held my student ID up to the camera and said her name is Sylvia Felton, and she's a sophomore at Avant Design Academy. How can you claim to be Claude Stark's sister when you don't even have the same last name? I panicked because she was exposing my personal information online by blatantly showing the internet my student ID. I tried to grab it back, but two women held me down. Julia became enraged, feeling that I had tricked her. She slapped me hard twice. I felt the world around me spin, as the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. You vixen! How dare you trick me! I'll tear you apart! Julia cried out in a shrill voice, as I was pinned down. I couldn't avoid her furious physical blows. We really are siblings, I said weakly. No one believed me. Everyone was fixated on the luxurious decor inside the villa. Claude spared no expense on you. I can't believe he set up such a lavish dwelling for you, Julia said with a sneer, as she glanced around. Then she uttered two words, coldly. Smash it. Come on everybody. Keep those live gifts coming. The live demolition starts now. Orla screeched excitedly. This house's decor was my wedding gift to Claude. I designed the layout and chose the design company myself for over half a year. I'd been here every chance I had to monitor the workers. Panic surged through me when I heard that they were going to wreck the villa. No, don't ruin the house. This is all my hard work. I struggled fiercely against the two women pinning me down. I clawed at them, leaving several gashes on their arms. They cursed as they tightened their grip. It wasn't the money I cared about. It was my work, my effort. The more agitated I was, the more pleased they were. Within minutes, the sound of smashing and breaking filled the room. The top of the line TV was shattered, the leather couch was slashed, and even the antique vases lay in pieces. You're all insane. I'm calling the police on you, I said, through clenched teeth, thoroughly maddened at the chaos that was unfolding. My words reached the ears of the woman restraining me. They jeered. What, this little tramp wants to call the cops? Will the police side with mistresses? This is a family matter. We're all Julia's family, and we're here to support her. They shoved and pinched me as I lay curled up on the ground, bracing myself against the pain. What a viewer said, that this painting is a world-renowned piece. How much is it worth? Did you say $400 million? Orla asked exaggeratedly. This drew my attention immediately. I cried out, don't touch that painting. You can't afford it. It's worth $500 million. There's no way Claude would spend so much on a real painting for his mistress. It's definitely fake. A fake. That size should still be quite valuable. Look at how panicked she is. The women stood in front of the painting, bickering away. Don't touch that painting. If you damage it, you'll have to spend your entire fortune just to make up for the loss, I said angrily. Claude had bought this painting anonymously, at an auction, specifically asked me to hang it in his new home. Upon hearing this, Julia grew angrier. I asked Claude to buy me a $50 million ring, and he refused. Yet he spent $500 million on a worthless painting for you. I ought to teach you a good lesson. She turned to the others and shouted, destroy that stupid painting. Everyone watch as we stomp on a world-famous painting. Isn't this exciting? Orla yelled in excitement. They took down the painting and tore off the frame with their dirty feet. They trampled all over Claude's treasured masterpiece. I silently prayed, and hoped that the art restorer would be able to repair the damage they had inflicted. Get me a pair of scissors. Claude must have bought it for this tart as a token of their love. I'm cutting it to pieces. Julia declared. All my remaining hope vanished. Julia, you're going to regret this, I said helplessly. Didn't my brother say his girlfriend was sweet and gentle? Did he know that she was capable of such malicious acts? I watched in shock as the priceless painting was shredded to pieces. I felt numb all over. When Julia's gaze landed on the $8 million piano, afterward, I shot her a glacial stare. She walked up to the piano, her gaze fixated on its glossy surface. Then she ran her hand over a row of keys. The melodious sound of the piano echoed through the room. Julia's face contorted with fury as she came over to me. She yanked my hair and kicked me repeatedly. You wretch, this is my favorite piano. Claude said he'd buy it for me. Yet here it is in your place. Julia screamed. I fell to the ground again as her high heels dug into me. The only thing I could do was curl up in defense. I gritted my teeth, wondering what kind of look would appear on Julia's face once she knew she was destroying her new marital home and piano. Then again, she didn't need the house anymore. I vowed not to let her become a part of the Stark family. How do you like the act of the mistress being torn apart by the fiancé? It's very satisfying, isn't it? Remember this tramp's name. Everyone. It's Sylvia Felton. Feel free to dig up her details. Orla said in her annoying voice. I thought I couldn't be humiliated any further, but then they found my most treasured possession upstairs. Julia, take a look at this. What is it? When I saw them holding the velvet box, I forgot all my pain instantly. In fact, I was so panicked that my speech failed me. Julia opened the box, lifted the cover and took out the glass trophy I usually handled with the utmost care. It says first prize for information science. What's so special about this cheap trophy? It's in such a fancy box, let's smash it. Julia said. I cried out, no, don't smash it. As Julia raised the trophy over her head to smash it, I ignored my pain and scrambled to my feet while shouting, you can break anything else. Give that trophy back to me. Please, my mom and dad had won this trophy together. It was the country's most prestigious award for scientific research, due to differences in their academic pursuits and conflicting views on family and love. My parents divorced later on. My father took my brother and went into business. She took advantage of the booming economy to establish Stark Group. Meanwhile, my mom left with the trophy and moved to Devania. There she dedicated herself to science. She would sometimes hold this trophy and gaze at it lost in thought. I knew it reminded her of my dad, as this trophy symbolized their love. My mom never remarried. She raised me alone while pursuing her research. My mom passed away the year I became a freshman in the academy. This trophy wasn't only a testament to my parents' achievements, it was a symbol of their love, and my mother's last keepsake for me. Julia glanced at the trophy in her hand, then at my trembling, desperate expression. Her next words were laced with venom. She said nonchalantly, my daughter knelt before me, begging after a hit-and-run accident. Mom, I just got accepted to Harvard. I have a bright future ahead of me. If I go to jail, my life will be over. Please, save me. I agreed. During my 2 years in prison, neither my husband nor daughter visited me once. After being released, I discovered it had all been a scheme by my husband and daughter. They had already transferred all my assets. The daughter who had once cried and begged me to take the blame, now cursed me as an ex-con, ugly and old. She kicked me in the chest. I died from cardiac arrest. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day we received the college acceptance letter. Mom, Dad, I got accepted to Harvard. My adopted daughter Kira exclaimed excitedly. That's my girl. Harvard is one of the top universities in the country. You've really made your parents proud. Honey, didn't you just get a $500,000 year-end bonus? Let's use all of it to buy our daughter a BMW, my husband Jack said. This conversation felt so familiar. I suddenly realized I had been reborn. Dad, I'm still young. Buying a car would be too flashy. Besides, Mom worked hard for that money. I don't want to spend it, Kira said sweetly. In my previous life, I always thought she was a considerate, filial, and kind girl. It wasn't until I went to prison that I realized she was a vicious white lotus flower. But sweetheart, Daddy promised to reward you with a BMW if you got into Harvard, remember? Jack looked at me as he spoke. He was a stay-at-home dad, and all our household expenses came from my money. In my previous life, I felt guilty for not giving him a child. Why are you looking at me? You promised her, not me, I said coldly. Father and daughter were stunned, their eyes wide with shock. In my previous life, they always acted in concert, one playing the sweet daughter, the other the good father, constantly extracting money from me. And in my previous life, I always thought my adopted daughter was sensible, and my husband was generous, treating our adopted daughter like his own. Seeing them act again now made me feel indescribably disgusted. Have you lost your mind today? Our daughter got into Harvard. That's great news. You won't even buy her a car? Are you even fit to be a mother? Or is it that you've never truly seen Kira as your own daughter? Jack shouted at me. Dad, don't say that. $500,000 isn't a small amount. Mom's company needs working capital too. It's fine if we don't buy a car. Kira continued to act sensible. Well, how about a $300,000 car then? Surely that's not too much to ask, Jack yelled at me. Have you been out of touch with reality for too long? Since when is a $300,000 car considered cheap? Why don't you buy it for Kira yourself if you're so capable? I said mockingly. Jack was dumbfounded that I would say such things. Kira also had a "how could this be happening" expression. In my previous life, this routine worked on me every time. I always fell for it and thought they were good people. Mom, Dad, I don't want a car anymore. Please don't fight because of me. It's all my fault, Kira said pitifully, tears welling up on command. In my previous life, I would have hugged her and fulfilled all her desires. But in this life, I knew she was a vicious demon. Seeing her cry made my teeth grind with hatred. Slap. I gave her a hard slap across the face. Father and daughter stood there in shock. Kira looked at me with fear and confusion in her eyes. Oh, there was a mosquito on your face. I was too hasty and hit too hard, I said, pretending to be loving as I reached out to caress her red cheek. The next day at the company, I immediately changed all my bank card pins and mobile payment passwords. I also began planning to transfer my assets. In this life, I couldn't let Jack get his hands on my money again. Afterwards, I asked the school for Kira's candidate number and checked her SAT scores. I was shocked. She only scored 1,050. Even with an extra 400 points, she wouldn't get into Harvard. In my previous life, Kira had shown me several mock test score reports, all above 1450. At the time, I believed them completely, but now I realized those mock test scores must have been fake. In the afternoon, I went to a private detective agency and asked them to thoroughly investigate Jack and Kira. I suspected they were actually father and daughter. 12 years ago, Jack took me to an orphanage. Among dozens of children, he chose Kira. When Kira first met Jack, she showed a natural affinity for him. At the time, I just thought they had a connection, that it was fate. I liked her too. But thinking about it now, the fact that they could work together to deceive me, there could be no other explanation besides a father-daughter relationship. If that was true, it was truly terrifying to think about. They had been playing this long game for 12 years, slowly emptying my assets bit by bit. A week later, at the company, I received a text message from my credit card. The supplementary card had been used to spend $300,000. I had overlooked canceling the supplementary card. To make it convenient for Jack to buy groceries and cover household expenses, I had given him a supplementary card. Without even thinking, I knew the $300,000 must have been for the car. I quickly called the bank and canceled the supplementary card. In the evening, as I approached our building, I saw a new BMW X2 without license plates in the parking lot. As soon as I entered the house, Kira sweetly brought me slippers. Welcome home, Mom. You must be tired from work. Seeing her fake smile, I wanted to slap her, but I couldn't reveal my hand before the investigation was complete. Your dad bought you a car? I asked casually. Mom, I kept refusing, but Dad wouldn't listen. I couldn't do anything about it, she said, putting on an innocent and helpless expression. I've canceled your supplementary card. From now on, I'll give you $10,000 a month for household expenses. If you need to buy anything big, let me know and I'll handle it, I said. What do you mean? Our daughter got into Harvard. Doesn't she deserve a reward? Jack angrily demanded. I almost exposed them. With her grades, she'd never get into Harvard in a million years. Fortunately, I held back. I'm thinking of our daughter too. She's still young and just got her license. What if there's a car accident? How could we bear to bury our child? I said seriously, cursing them. Jack jumped up, slamming the table. How dare you curse our daughter? At that moment, I was certain Kira was Jack's biological daughter. I'm just worried about her safety. I care about her too, I said. You're just stingy, Jack shouted. Mom, are you upset that Dad spent your money to buy me a car? Kira immediately got into character, asking me with tears in her eyes. I stroked her head and said gently, how could Mom begrudge spending money on you? I'm just worried about your driving skills. What if you had an accident? If something happened to you, how could Mom go on living? You can act, but so can I. Mom, I got into Harvard, one of the top universities in the country. If it were someone else's mother, they'd throw a celebration party and buy expensive gifts. But you haven't done anything. Don't you love me anymore? As she spoke, the tears started flowing. Her acting was truly superb. I continued stroking her head and said, a party would be too extravagant and wasteful. Besides, we should stay low-key. Being too high profile will make people jealous. As for gifts, isn't that BMW a gift? Mom, you don't love me anymore. You know, I didn't want the car to show off or for my own convenience. I had a dream. Mom, you've sacrificed so much for me over the years. I wanted to drive you on a road trip across the country. I'm touched that you have such a filial heart. But don't you think something's odd? I asked. What's odd? She asked, puzzled. You should earn money yourself to buy a car, then take me on a road trip. It's like saying you'll treat me to dinner, but I end up paying. Isn't that strange? I said seriously. She was stunned, wanting to argue but unable to. Rachel Johnson, are you even a mother? How can you discourage our daughter's filial piety? As Jack spoke, he winked at Kira. Mom, you're too much. You don't love me anymore. With that, she ran out. Kira, Jack chased after her. I suddenly remembered the notice at the entrance to the community. Last night the security cameras were damaged. Property management has contacted repair personnel. Residents are advised to secure their belongings and lock doors and windows. Were they setting me up? I was alone now, and with the security cameras broken, there would be no witnesses if they framed me. Thinking of this, I immediately called Chris, my assistant. Chris lived only a mile from my house. Then I called 5 other employees, saying there was an urgent meeting and asking them to come to my house as quickly as possible. I said I would reimburse their travel expenses. At 9 p.m., I heard the door open and came out of the study. Have you been home the whole time? Jack asked. Yes, I replied. I don't believe you. Didn't you go out looking for Kira? She's not a child anymore. She can take care of herself. Are you even Kira's mother? How can you say such heartless things? We can't protect her forever. She has to walk her own path in life, I said calmly. After arguing with him for about 15 minutes, Kira returned in a panic. As soon as she entered, she knelt before me. Mom, I hit someone and ran away. Can you take the blame for me? Please save me. I don't want to go to jail. I just got accepted to Harvard. My life is just beginning. Hearing these familiar words, I was filled with rage. I wanted to strangle her right then and there. In my previous life, I was truly foolish to take the blame for her. Kira, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, I said, pretending to comfort her as I hugged her. Mom, will you help me? She asked pitifully. Of course I'll help you. You're my precious daughter. Mom, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. You still love me. I swear, after you get out of prison, I'll be extra filial to you. What do you mean, get out of prison? I pushed her away, pretending to be surprised. Mom, didn't you say you'd help me? Aren't you going to take the blame for me? She asked, confused. My husband and his lover died in a car accident, leaving me with a pair of twins. I had raised 2 children alone for 18 years. Now, as they get admitted to top universities, my heart swells with joy. Despite everyone's opposition, I insisted on keeping and raising the twins. Micah and Maxwell were always filial. They understood my years of effort in raising them, and promised that after graduation and securing good jobs, they would support me to enjoy my life. With their birthday just 2 days away, I considered how to celebrate. In the past, I always booked hotel rooms for their birthdays, but this year, I decided to combine it with their graduation party for a bigger celebration. I booked a ballroom at one of the city's best hotels. At the same time, I shared the news that my 2 sons were admitted to Ivy League colleges in the family group chat. The group soon buzzed with excitement. I briefly skimmed the messages and posted the party location to the group. After that, I turned off my phone notifications and quietly awaited the celebration. The birthday party was set for 2 days later at 10:00 a.m. I arrived early at the hotel that morning to review the menu and ensure every detail of the party was perfect. Most attendees were relatives of the Parker family, but my parents were absent. Back then, I ignored their objections and insisted on adopting Anthony and Amber's children. When my parents found out, they were so angry that they almost had a heart attack. Even after so many years, they never understood why I chose to raise someone else's kids instead of leading a more secure life. Anthony's parents, Richard and Sophia, entered the hall, assisted by the crowd. They walked straight to the main table and sat down, where Anthony's brother and sister sat with their families. There were 8 people seated at the main table. They surrounded my sons, and the seat was so full that there was no seat for me. Hannah, what are you waiting for? Hurry and get Mom and Dad some water, Lydia called out, grabbing some snacks from the table. Lydia was Anthony's sister. She had endured an unhappy marriage and domestic abuse, and she was criticized for not being able to give birth to a son. Now, at 40 years old, she had given birth to a boy, which made her walk with a newfound confidence. Micah and Maxwell attempted to get up to help, but were restrained by Richard and Sophia. Micah and Maxwell, come talk to me, Sophia urged. Look at how handsome the boys are. Just like my brother, Lydia said. They look more like Amber to me, Anthony's brother remarked. Richard and Sophia glared at him fiercely, and he quickly shrank back into his seat, not daring to say a word. I moved between the tables, serving food and pouring wine. Micah and Maxwell couldn't bear it any longer, and added a chair between them. They pushed me into my seat and said, Mom, our birthday is your day of suffering. Sit down and take a rest. This prompted a shift in the room's atmosphere. Lydia smirked. Hannah, my brother would be thrilled to see his son raised so well by you. Richard coughed lightly, effectively silencing her. Hannah, today is such a nice day. I have something to discuss with you, Sophia said, her eyes sparkling. Go ahead, I replied. Sophia continued. Micah and Maxwell are going off to college soon. It'll be empty for you in that 3-bedroom apartment. When they start school, Richard and I will move in, and I'll cook for you while you work. So that was her plan. My parents had initially put a down payment on the house I lived in, intending to add Anthony's name. 6 months into our marriage, he took a drive with Amber and had a fatal car accident, and both of them died. When I saw him again, he was just a handful of ashes. My parents had helped me pay the mortgage, so the property was solely in my name. Now, as my children grew up, Richard and Sophia were eyeing my house. I explained, Mom, it's not that I won't let you live there. Micah and Maxwell will be studying abroad. That's why I've sold the house and will downsize to a 1-bedroom apartment, using the rest for their education. Richard's face turned pale. He slammed the table. As a part of the Parker family, why don't you discuss such matters with us? I'm doing this for Anthony's children, I replied, feigning surprise. Richard continued, what about the money from the house sale? You can give it to Sophia. She will save it for you. I'm worried about your extravagant spending. In the past, as long as I claimed it was for the children's benefit, they usually remained quiet. But today, Richard and Sophia's demeanor suggested I was now expendable with my sons heading to college. Thinking of this, I said calmly, I've instructed my lawyer to deposit the money into a growth fund. Micah and Maxwell will receive $10,000 monthly until they turn 40. Richard's furrowed brow finally relaxed at that. He said, good to see you're thinking ahead and leaving money for my grandchildren. You don't need to buy a house, just rent one, and don't waste the money. As the chatter continued, the hotel manager approached and handed me the microphone. He said, today is your son's birthday and graduation party. As their mother,
I'd like to ask you to share a few words and some insights. Taking the microphone, I began. Thank you all for attending Maxwell and Micah's graduation party. Today, my sons have been accepted into Ivy League colleges. It'll be a pity if their biological parents are not present on such a significant day. Before I could finish, a commotion interrupted me. A man and a woman entered arm in arm. I looked up and, despite the 18 years that had passed, instantly recognized them. My late husband Anthony and his beloved Amber. The hall buzzed with murmurs. Richard and Sophia, seated at the main table, showed no excitement at seeing their son returned from the dead. Instead, they calmly invited Amber to sit beside them. Anthony, who had been dead for 18 years, approached me. He said, "Hannah, you may not be a good wife, but you've been a good mother." My sons, finally breaking free from their shock, looked confused. "What's going on?" Anthony pointed at Amber and said, "Amber is your biological mother. Hannah couldn't have children. If she hadn't refused to divorce me and threatened me to commit suicide back then, our family wouldn't have been torn apart for 18 years. Before I could defend myself, the Parker family members turned to my sons. "He's right. It was Hannah's refusal to divorce that kept you from your birth parents for 18 years. Don't think Hannah treated you well. She didn't have the best intentions. Well, now that you're grown and have been admitted to Ivy League colleges, the family can finally reunite." Micah and Maxwell stood frozen, unsure of how to react. Amber wailed, taking their hands and showing them her phone. "I'm your biological mother. I send you gifts every year. I even sneak in to see you after school." As she spoke, she turned to me and added, "Hannah, thank you for raising my two sons so well." Anthony wrapped his arm around her shoulders and looked at me with a hint of sarcasm. He demanded, "You and I are getting a divorce. After 18 years, I'm marrying Amber." Everyone thought I would disagree, or even make a scene, but facing the discussions and inquiring eyes of dozens of people from the Parker family, I laughed. "Okay, I agree. I'll file for divorce tomorrow and reunite your family." My words stunned the audience. They couldn't believe I would give away the sons I had raised for 18 years. Even Anthony and Amber stared at me in disbelief. They thought I would throw a tantrum and cry, but didn't expect me to agree so readily. Anthony looked at me in disbelief and asked puzzledly, "Are you out of your mind?" I replied directly, "What? Not happy about it?" Amber quickly pulled on Anthony's arm, and he, fearing I might change my mind, retrieved a divorce agreement from his bag. He said, "Then sign the divorce agreement. From now on, Micah and Maxwell have nothing to do with you, and you can't see them again." Without reading it, I signed. "Mom, you don't want us anymore?" Micah and Maxwell looked at me, hurt and confused by my quick compliance. Amber tucked the agreement away and said complacently, "Hannah, thank you for making us whole. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be so carefree out there." Looking at her two tall sons, Amber grinned with a proud smile. "Okay, there's nothing more for you to do here. Just go." Richard waved me off impatiently. I said, "Now that the agreement is signed, it's time to tell you the truth." "What do you mean?" Amber asked, confused. I sighed with relief. After 18 years, it was finally over. I clapped my hands and called to the door. "Come in." Moments later, two figures entered the hall.
My husband's phone buzzed while he was showering, and I saw a text from someone named the Queen that said, "Can't wait for this weekend, King." The thing is, my husband Gregory was the most predictable man on the planet, and that's exactly why I married him. He'd worked as an accountant at the same firm for 12 years. He ordered the same turkey club from the same deli every single day at exactly noon, and he took me to the restaurant he proposed at every single anniversary without fail. Date nights were always the same Italian restaurant where he always ordered the chicken parm. Vacations were always the same resort in Cancun, where he always picked the same room on the 3rd floor, and even our arguments were boring because he'd just agree with me to avoid conflict. Gregory was the kind of man who set his alarm for 6:15 every morning, even on weekends, because he said sleeping in made him feel disoriented, and he wore the same rotation of 5 polo shirts to work because he said it eliminated decision fatigue. His idea of a wild Friday night was staying up past 10 to watch a documentary about bridges, and one time he got genuinely excited because our grocery store rearranged the cereal aisle and he called it an adventure. He didn't watch sports, he didn't go to bars, and the most spontaneous thing he'd ever done in our entire marriage was order a different flavor of ice cream at the grocery store one time and then put it back because he said he wasn't sure about it. So when Gregory suddenly started working late every Thursday and spending entire Saturdays at team building exercises that he could never quite explain in detail, I knew something was wrong immediately, because this man had never deviated from his routine for anything in the entire decade I'd known him. The first thing I noticed was the stains. Gregory would come home on Saturdays with these dark reddish smears on his collar that looked exactly like lipstick, and when I confronted him about it, he got all flustered and stammered out, "Oh, that's just from the trust fall exercises, someone's face hit my shoulder," which didn't even make sense because trust falls don't involve your neck. Then he started doing his own laundry for the first time in our entire marriage, and when I asked why he was suddenly so interested in household chores, he said he was trying to be more helpful around the house, which would have been sweet if it wasn't so obviously suspicious coming from a man who had never once voluntarily touched the washing machine. I found a receipt crumpled up in his jacket pocket for $400 from a place called In the Night, and when I asked him about it, he said it was a work expense for office supplies, and changed the subject so fast I barely had time to process what he'd said. The Thursday nights got worse too because he started coming home later and later, sometimes not until almost midnight, and he always looked exhausted in a way that was different from his normal tired because because he'd be flushed and out of breath like he'd been doing something physical. I tried to get him to talk about it one night and sat him down at the kitchen table and asked him directly if there was something going on that he needed to tell me, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Honey, I promise you there is nothing to worry about. I am just very committed to being a team player at work." And then he winced when he sat down because his entire back was apparently covered in bruises. Then the scratches started showing up on his arms, long red marks that looked like someone had clawed him, and one Thursday he came home with a massive bruise on his ribs that had already started turning purple. I asked him what happened, and he told me with a completely straight face that he tripped on the rug while he was rushing to the fax machine at work. And I just stared at him because nobody in the year 2024 is rushing to a fax machine for anything. That's when I knew my husband was completely full of it, and whatever he was hiding was something he desperately didn't want me to find out about. I started paying closer attention to everything, and noticed that he'd changed the password on his phone for the first time ever, and when I casually asked him why, he said his company required stronger security, which was hilarious coming from a man whose previous password was literally the word password, followed by the number 1. I also noticed he'd been getting packages delivered to the house while I was at work, because I found shipping labels in the recycling bin from companies I'd never heard of with names that sounded like costume shops or prop stores. And when I brought it up, he said his coworker was using our address for personal deliveries, which was the weakest lie he'd told yet. One night I walked past the garage and heard what sounded like metal clanking together, and when I opened the door, Gregory was standing there looking guilty next to a giant duffel bag that he zipped shut so fast he almost caught his finger in it, and told me he was organizing old camping gear, even though we had never been camping a single day in our lives. The final straw came on a Saturday morning when I watched him get dressed, and he put on athletic clothes instead of his usual khakis, threw a giant duffel bag in the trunk of his car that I'd never seen before, and told me he'd be at team building until dinner. I checked his location sharing that he'd always kept on because Gregory was not the kind of man who had anything to hide, and I watched his little blue dot drive 40 minutes outside of town, past the suburbs and past the office parks to some random county park in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed my keys and got in my car and followed him because I needed to see whoever this queen was with my own eyes, and I needed Gregory to look me in the face and explain why the most boring man alive was suddenly living a double life. I followed his GPS dot down a 2-lane road that turned into a gravel path that led into the parking lot of this random county park that I didn't even know existed, and the parking lot was completely packed with cars, which already didn't make sense for a Saturday morning at a park in the middle of nowhere. I parked at the far end of the lot and started walking toward the main field area because I could hear noise coming from that direction, and the closer I got, the louder it became until it sounded like a full crowd of people shouting over each other. I came around the tree line into the open field, and I completely froze in place because there were at least 150 people dressed in full medieval costumes, absolutely wailing on each other with foam swords in broad daylight like their lives depended on it. There were knights in actual suits of armor swinging massive foam weapons at each other, people in flowing robes waving fake wands and shouting spells at the top of their lungs, archers with foam-tipped arrows firing into the crowd, and someone was literally riding a horse in a full suit of chainmail, while a group of people dressed as peasants ran screaming in the other direction. There were actual catapults on both sides of the field launching foam boulders across the grass that were exploding into pieces on impact, and people were throwing themselves to the ground dramatically every time they got hit like they were starring in their own personal action movie. There were referees walking around in black and white striped tunics making calls like, "You've been slain, take a knee," and people were actually arguing about whether a foam arrow had technically hit them, or just grazed their shoulder pad. Most of the fighters had these dramatic red streaks painted across their faces and necks like warrior marks, and the ones who had been fighting the longest had the paint smeared all down their collars from sweating through their battles, which suddenly explained every single stain I'd ever found on Gregory's shirts. A woman in a full Viking helmet sprinted past me screaming, "For the Northern Alliance!" and shoulder-checked a guy in a cape so hard he flew sideways into a hay bale, and I just stood there with my mouth hanging open, because I had driven out here expecting to catch my husband with another woman, and instead I had apparently stumbled into a full-scale medieval war. I watched these people fight for what felt like an eternity, because I genuinely could not process what I was seeing, and the longer I stood there, the more elaborate I realized the whole thing was because there were banners and flags planted all over the field representing different kingdoms, medical tents where people were getting their face paint reapplied, and a whole section that looked like a medieval marketplace where people were trading foam weapons and pieces of armor between battles, while a guy in a jester costume juggled actual flaming torches, and a woman painted to look like a dragon posed for pictures with people's kids. Then a trumpet blasted so loud it echoed across the entire field, and every single person immediately stopped fighting and dropped to one knee facing this massive decorated tent at the far end of the field that I somehow hadn't noticed until that moment. The crowd of 150 warriors went completely silent, and then they started chanting in unison, "Long live the king, long live the king," and the chanting got louder and louder until the flaps of the tent flew open, and a man in the most elaborate golden armor I had ever seen stepped out wearing a red velvet cape that dragged behind him and a crown that actually glinted in the sunlight. A woman standing next to me who was dressed as some kind of elf grabbed my arm and whispered, "That's King Gregorian the Unbroken. He's led our kingdom for 3 years, and he has never lost a single battle." And I felt my entire brain short-circuit because she had just said the name Gregorian. The king raised a massive foam sword above his head, and the crowd roared so loud I could feel it in my chest. And then he shouted in this booming voice I had never heard before in my life, "Today we have defended our realm once more, and our enemies shall tremble at the mere whisper of our name." And every single person on that field went absolutely insane, cheering and banging their weapons against their shields. I was already standing there feeling like I had somehow fallen into an alternate dimension, and then King Gregorian the Unbroken reached up with both hands and slowly removed his helmet, and I actually screamed out loud because it was Gregory. It was my Gregory, my boring accountant husband who couldn't even decide what to order at Chipotle without asking me twice, standing there in golden armor with war paint streaked across his face looking like the most confident and powerful person I had ever seen in my entire life, while 150 people chanted his name like he was an actual actual king. Gregory's eyes found mine across that field, and he didn't look embarrassed or caught or guilty at all, and instead he just stood there looking at me with this expression I'd never seen on his face before, like he was finally letting me see who he actually was. He walked over to me still wearing the full armor and cape and crown while 100 people watched, and he said, "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how to explain that your husband runs a medieval kingdom on the weekends, and honestly I couldn't even be mad because I had spent weeks convinced he was having an affair, and instead he was leading an army of nerds into foam combat as an undefeated warrior king." The woman who had texted him turned out to be a 62-year-old retired teacher named Brenda, who played the kingdom's sorceress, and had been helping Gregory plan a surprise ceremony to officially crown me as his queen in front of the entire kingdom. He taught me to wield a foam sword that summer, and I am now a general in the Gregorian kingdom with my own suit of armor, and a title he gave me on our anniversary, the Queen.
My brother dumped my fiancée years ago because he was bored. Last weekend he proposed to her at family dinner to prove I stole her. My brother Mark has been the golden child his entire life. Whatever he wanted, he got. Whatever he did was excused. He hated the idea of me having anything he didn't have, and would go out of his way to one-up me on everything. When we were younger, he convinced my parents to let him take my car whenever he wanted because he crashed his, and they didn't want him to feel bad about it. Years of that treatment pushed me to go low contact with him the moment I moved out. What I didn't know during that time was that Mark had briefly dated a woman named Jen. They were only together for about a month before he dumped her because he got bored and didn't want to settle down. I never met her, and he never mentioned her. A few years later, I moved back home and met Jen at a bar completely by coincidence. She was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I had ever met. We hit it off immediately and started dating shortly after. I had no clue she was Mark's ex until months later when things got serious and I finally introduced her to my family. I showed my parents pictures at dinner, and when the phone got passed to Mark, he completely lost it. He started screaming that I was a terrible brother for dating his ex and demanded I break up with her immediately. I refused. When I asked Jen about it, she confirmed they dated briefly and explained that he was the one who ended things because he didn't want commitment. I figured Mark would get over it eventually, and after a few weeks he stopped bringing it up. I thought we were past it. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to dinner with both of our families and her closest friends. I got down on one knee and proposed. She said yes. Mark blew up again in front of everyone, yelling about how I was rubbing it in his face. My sisters and I shut him down immediately, and the rest of the night went on without him. After that, I barely saw Mark for 2 months. I assumed he went low contact with me, which I honestly preferred. Then out of nowhere, he invited me and Jen to a family dinner at his apartment. My parents and sisters were going too, so we figured it was safe and agreed to show up. Dinner was normal. Nothing fancy. Afterward, we moved to the living room to talk and everything seemed fine. About 30 minutes into the conversation, Mark stood up and said he had an announcement. He gave this long speech about how happy he was to have his family together for such a big moment. Then he got down on one knee, pulled out the cheapest ring I have ever seen, and asked Jen to marry him. The room went dead silent. Jen looked horrified and told him to put it away and stand up. He didn't move. He just kept holding the ring out and staring at her like he expected her to say yes. My dad tried to grab Mark, but I got to him first. I hit him before I even realized what I was doing. I hit him again while he was down. My dad pulled me off and Mark stayed on the floor holding his face. He looked up at me and said he just wanted to show me that Jen was never really into me and that she was only with me to get back at him. Get back at him for what I will never understand. My parents rushed me and Jen out of the apartment before it could escalate further. They promised they would talk to him. It has been 4 days since that dinner, and I have not heard a single word from Mark or my parents. Jen has been quiet too. She keeps saying she's fine, but I can tell something is bothering her. Last night I woke up at 3 in the morning and she wasn't in bed. I found her sitting in the kitchen in the dark staring at her phone. When I asked what she was doing, she locked the screen immediately and said nothing. I didn't push it. This morning after she left for work, I checked the phone records on our family plan. There were 47 text messages between her and Mark in the last 4 days. I haven't opened them yet. I'm not sure I want to know what they say. I sit in my car outside our apartment building for 20 minutes staring at my phone. The text message records are pulled up on the screen showing 47 messages between Jen and Mark. My hands shake as I scroll through the timestamps. They've been talking multiple times every single day since that dinner. At 3 in the morning when I found her in the dark kitchen, she was texting him. I can see it right there in the records. 3:17 a.m., 3:21 a.m., 3:34 a.m. The messages keep going until almost 4 in the morning. I scroll back through the other days and see the same pattern. Morning messages, afternoon messages, late night messages. They've been in constant contact and she never said a word to me about it. I finally force myself to get out of the car because sitting here avoiding this will only make it worse. My legs feel weak as I walk toward the building entrance. I take the stairs instead of the elevator because I need the extra time to figure out what I'm going to say. When I reach our floor, I can smell coffee brewing from inside our apartment. The normalcy of it makes my stomach turn. I unlock the door and walk inside. Jen is standing at the stove making breakfast. She's wearing my old college sweatshirt, and her hair is pulled back in a messy bun. She looks over her shoulder and smiles at me like everything is completely normal, like she hasn't been secretly texting my brother for 4 days straight. I walk over to the counter and put my phone face down between us. She goes back to flipping pancakes. I watch her for a few seconds before I speak. Why have you been texting Mark 47 times in 4 days? She freezes with the spatula in midair. Her face goes pale. The pancake on the griddle starts to burn, but she doesn't move to flip it. I watch her decide in real time whether to lie or come clean. Her mouth opens and closes twice before any words come out. She finally puts the spatula down and turns off the stove. She admits she's been texting Mark, but swears it's not what I think. She says he's been sending her long messages about how sorry he is and how he ruined everything. She says she's been trying to get him to leave us alone. She grabs her phone from the counter and unlocks it. She pulls up the messages and shows them to me. I scroll through and see mostly him sending paragraphs while she sends short responses telling him to stop. But then I see other messages. Messages where she's asking him why he really proposed to her. Messages where she's asking if he actually had feelings back then. Messages where she's asking what he meant when he said she was only with me to get back at him. I realize she's been seeking closure or validation from my brother behind my back. I tell her I understand wanting closure, but going behind my back to get it from Mark feels like a betrayal. Especially after he just tried to humiliate both of us in front of our entire family. She gets defensive immediately. She says I'm being controlling. She says she's allowed to have conversations without reporting every detail to me. She says maybe if my family wasn't so messed up, none of this would be happening. Her voice gets louder with each sentence. I tell her that's not fair. I tell her she knew how much Mark's proposal stunt hurt me, and she chose to engage with him anyway. She says I'm making this about me when it's about her need for closure. I say closure doesn't require dozens of secret text messages at 3 a.m. The fight escalates fast. We're both saying things we don't mean. She brings up how I never want to deal with family problems. I bring up how she always needs validation from other people. Back and forth until neither of us is listening anymore. She finally grabs her keys off the counter. She says she needs space to think about whether she wants to marry into this family drama. The door slams behind her before I can respond. I stand in the kitchen surrounded by the smell of burnt pancakes and listen to her car start in the parking lot below. 2 hours pass. I try calling her 3 times, but she doesn't answer. I clean up the kitchen and throw away the burnt pancakes. I sit on the couch staring at my phone wondering if she's coming back. Then Brielle calls. She says Mom and Dad want to have a family meeting tonight without Jen there. I tell her I'm not interested in another ambush where they make excuses for Mark. She promises this time is different. She says Mark showed up at their house yesterday crying about how I ruined his life by stealing his ex-girlfriend. Brielle says our parents are finally starting to see how manipulative he's being. I'm not holding my breath, but I agree to come. That evening I drive to my parents' house. Mark isn't there, but the tension is thick as Mom serves coffee with shaking hands. Dad starts by saying they've been doing a lot of thinking about the family dynamics. He says they realize they may have been too lenient with Mark over the years. I almost laugh because too lenient doesn't begin to cover decades of enabling his entitled behavior. I stay quiet and let him continue. Mom admits that Mark has always been difficult when he doesn't get his way. She says they've made excuses because he was their first child and they didn't want to damage his confidence. She says when he came over crying yesterday about me stealing Jen, she finally saw how delusional he's become. She says he genuinely believes Jen belonged to him and I took something that was his. Dad adds that they've decided Mark needs to see a therapist. They're making it a condition of continuing to support him financially, since at 29 he's still partially dependent on them. I tell my parents that therapy for Mark is fine, but it doesn't address the real issue. They've spent my entire life prioritizing his feelings over mine. One conversation doesn't erase that pattern. Brielle backs me up and points out specific examples from our childhood. She reminds them about when they let Mark take my car whenever he wanted after he crashed his own. Cleo adds that she's been keeping her distance from family events for years because watching them baby Mark while dismissing everyone else became unbearable. The conversation shifts when Dad asks about Jen and whether we're still engaged after everything that happened. I admit I don't know because I discovered she's been secretly texting Mark for days. Even though the messages seem mostly innocent, the secrecy feels like a breach of trust. Mom looks genuinely distressed. She says she hopes Jen isn't actually considering Mark because his proposal stunt was clearly a manipulative power play rather than genuine feelings. After the family meeting, I drive to my friend Reed's house because I need to talk to someone outside the family dysfunction. Reed has known me since high school and watched my relationship with Mark deteriorate over the years. He listens to everything without interrupting. Then he asks me the hard question. Do I actually trust Jen, or has Mark's interference poisoned the relationship beyond repair, regardless of what the texts say? Night at Reed's place turns into coffee and silence. He doesn't push me for answers I don't have. I crash on his couch and stare at the ceiling until my eyes burn. Around midnight, my phone buzzes with a long message from Mark. He says he knows he messed up. He says he never actually wanted Jen back. He just couldn't handle seeing me happy when his own life feels empty and meaningless. He admits he's been jealous of me for years because I escaped the family and built my own life, while he stayed stuck trying to live up to being the golden child. The proposal stunt was him trying to prove he could still get whatever he wanted. When Jen rejected him, he realized how pathetic he'd become. I screenshot the message and send it to Brielle. She calls immediately and warns me not to let his sob story make me forget that he deliberately tried to sabotage my engagement. She says this is classic Mark waiting until he faces consequences to suddenly become self-aware and vulnerable. I know she's right, but part of me feels sad for Mark, despite everything. That makes me angry at myself for still caring. Jen comes home the next morning looking like she hasn't slept. We sit down at the kitchen table, and she admits that when Mark started texting her apologies, part of her wanted to understand why he dumped her so casually years ago. Not because she wants him back, but because his rejection damaged her self-worth and she never got closure. His recent messages revealed that he dumped her because he was terrified of commitment and she was getting too serious. That actually helps her realize it was never about her not being good enough. I tell her I understand the need for closure, but I'm hurt she sought it secretly, instead of talking to me first. She apologizes and explains she was afraid I'd see it as her having feelings for Mark, when really she was just trying to heal an old wound. We talk for hours about trust and communication. She promises no more secret conversations with Mark or anyone else. If she needs to work through something, she'll include me in the process. We decide to postpone the wedding planning until we rebuild the trust that Mark's interference damaged. We're still engaged and committed to each other, but we both recognize that getting married right now while everything feels unstable would be a mistake. She suggests couples counseling to work through the family drama and communication issues. I agree because I want our relationship to survive this stronger than before. 3 weeks into couples counseling, our therapist helps us see that Mark's behavior exposed existing cracks in our relationship. I have trust issues from watching my family prioritize Mark my whole life. Jen has abandonment issues from her past that Mark's rejection made worse. The counselor points out that Mark didn't create these problems. He just provided the pressure that revealed them. This changes how we approach healing, because we're addressing our individual wounds rather than just blaming Mark. According to Brielle, Mark starts therapy like our parents required, and he's actually taking it seriously for once. His therapist apparently told him he has traits that come from being overpraised as a child. He's working on understanding how his need for constant validation hurts the people around him. I'm not sure Mark can really change, but Cleo points out that at least he's trying, which is more than he's ever done before. A month after the disastrous dinner, Mark asks through Brielle if he can meet me for coffee to apologize in person. I'm not sure about it, but Jen encourages me to hear him out. She says holding on to anger is hurting me more than it's hurting Mark. I agree to meet him at a neutral coffee shop, with the understanding that one apology doesn't fix everything, but it might be a start. Mark shows up looking genuinely humble for the first time in his life. He apologizes without making excuses or trying to minimize what he did. He admits he's been a terrible brother. His jealousy poisoned our relationship. The proposal stunt was cruel and manipulative. He says his therapist is helping him understand that our parents' favoritism damaged both of us. Me by being neglected, and him by never learning to take responsibility. He's not asking for forgiveness right away. Just a chance to slowly rebuild trust over time. I tell Mark I appreciate the apology, but I need to see real change before I can trust him again. That means respecting my boundaries with Jen and stopping the manipulative behavior. He agrees, and says he's also working with his therapist on getting his own life together. Finding a job that isn't funded by our parents. Moving into his own apartment. Building an identity separate from being the golden child. For the first time in years, I feel a small bit of hope that maybe we could eventually have a real brother relationship. 2 months after the proposal incident, Jen and I are in a much better place after consistent counseling and honest communication. We've set a new wedding date for next fall, giving us time to strengthen our foundation and make sure we're getting married for the right reasons. My relationship with my parents is still strained, but they're making genuine efforts to treat all their children equally and acknowledge their past mistakes. Mark follows through on his promises and gets a job as a sales manager at a local company. He moves into a modest apartment across town. He starts dating someone new, a woman named Maya, who doesn't know our family history and treats him like a regular person rather than the golden child. Brielle says Mark seems happier and more grounded than she's seen him in years, though we're all being careful rather than assuming he's completely changed. At Thanksgiving dinner 3 months later, the family dynamic feels different in subtle but important ways. Mom and Dad make an effort to ask about everyone's lives equally, instead of centering conversation around Mark. Mark himself is quieter and more thoughtful, rather than taking over every discussion. When Dad proposes a toast to family, Mark adds his own toast specifically to me and Jen. He wishes us happiness and apologizes again for trying to ruin our engagement. Jen squeezes my hand under the table, and I realize we're actually going to be okay. Jen and I are planning our wedding for next October, and this time the excitement feels pure instead of tainted by family drama. Mark has maintained appropriate boundaries and is even helping Dad with some of the wedding prep. He's treating it like a chance to support me rather than compete. My relationship with my parents will probably never be perfect, but they're trying, and that's more than I expected. Most importantly, Jen and I came through this crisis with better communication and deeper trust. I'm confident we can handle whatever challenges come next because we've already survived the worst.
Our vegan friend tried to steal my therapy dog because she claimed I was abusing him by feeding him regular dog food. So I have this golden retriever named Benny, who's literally saved my life. I got him certified as a therapy dog 2 years ago, after my anxiety got so bad I couldn't leave my apartment for weeks. He's trained to detect when I'm about to have a panic attack and will literally lay on my chest until I calm down. My friend Jade went vegan about 3 years ago, and it's basically her entire personality now. Every hangout turns into a lecture about animal rights. Last month, Jade came over and saw me feeding Benny his normal dog food. She picked up the bag and started reading the ingredients out loud. Chicken meal, beef fat, all that stuff. Then she goes on this whole rant about how I'm forcing an innocent animal to participate in animal cruelty. I tried explaining that dogs are omnivores and need certain nutrients, but she wasn't having it. She started sending me links to vegan dog food brands every single day. Then she'd text me asking if I switched Benny's food yet. I kept telling her no. My vet specifically recommended his current food for his age and activity level. She said my vet was clearly paid off by Big Kibble or whatever. Things got weird when she showed up at my apartment unannounced one afternoon. I was at work and my roommate let her in because she said she forgot her sunglasses at our place last week. My roommate went to take a shower, and when she came out, Jade was gone. So was Benny. I got home an hour later and immediately noticed Benny wasn't at the door like usual. I checked every room and he was just gone. His leash was still hanging by the door. His food bowls were still on the kitchen floor. I started freaking out and called my roommate, who told me about Jade coming by. I called Jade like 15 times. She finally answered and said Benny was safe with her. She said she couldn't stand by and watch me abuse him anymore. I told her to bring him back right now or I'm calling the cops. She said, go ahead. She has photos of his food bag as evidence of neglect, and she already contacted 3 animal welfare organizations. I did call the cops. They went to her apartment and she refused to open the door at first. She kept yelling through the door that she was protecting Benny from abuse. The cops had to threaten to break down the door before she finally opened it. Benny came running out and jumped all over me. The cops asked Jade why she took someone else's dog, and she pulled out her phone to show them photos of Benny's food ingredients. She had literally photographed the nutritional label and highlighted every meat product in red marker. The cops just stared at her. One of the officers asked if the dog looked malnourished or injured. Benny was literally wagging his tail and licking everyone. The officer told Jade that feeding a dog regular dog food isn't abuse and she could be charged with theft. Jade started crying and saying she was trying to save him. They let me take Benny home but said I could press charges if I wanted. The next day I got a call from Animal Control saying someone filed a report about my dog. I had to schedule an inspection where they came to my apartment, checked Benny's living conditions, looked at his vet records, everything. The inspector said whoever called in the report claimed I was starving my dog and forcing him to eat rotting meat. Everything checked out fine and they closed the case. I texted Jade and told her I know she called Animal Control. She said yes, she did, because the cops clearly didn't care about animal welfare. I asked her one more time to just stop. She said not until Benny is on a proper vegan diet. 2 days later I came home and found a box on my doorstep. Inside was like 30 cans of vegan dog food and a note from Jade saying she'd keep sending more until I do the right thing. I took photos of everything and went to the police station to file an official report. I went home and tried to relax. That evening my phone started blowing up with notifications. My mom called first, then my sister, then people I hadn't talked to in years. They were all asking me about the video. I had no idea what they were talking about. My sister sent me a link. It was Jade's Instagram. She'd posted a 15-minute video titled "Exposing Animal Abuser in Our Community." My face was in the thumbnail. She showed clips of my apartment building, talked about my refusal to feed my dog ethically, and gave out my full name. The video already had 50,000 views. The comments were brutal. People were posting my address. Someone found my workplace. Then I saw a comment that made my heart stop. It said, "I live 2 blocks from her. On my way there now." I locked every door and window in my apartment. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely turn the deadbolt. My roommate Kelsey wasn't home. She'd gone to visit her boyfriend for the weekend. I was alone with Benny, who kept nudging my leg because he could sense my panic spiking. I called the police non-emergency line. The dispatcher sounded bored when I explained the situation. She said unless someone actually showed up and threatened me, there wasn't much they could do about online comments. I asked about the video with my address and she said I'd need to report it to Instagram directly. She did say a patrol car would swing by my building within the hour. Within the hour. Someone could be at my door in 10 minutes. I grabbed my phone and started reporting the video through Instagram's system. The process was slow. multiple screens asking for details and evidence. My phone kept buzzing with new notifications. The video was getting shared to Facebook groups now, local community pages. Someone had posted it in a neighborhood watch group with the caption, "This woman lives on Oak Street. Keep your pets away from her." I lived on Oak Street. My doorbell camera app lit up. Someone was standing outside my building's main entrance. A woman in her 30s with short blonde hair was looking at the directory panel. She had her phone out, comparing something on the screen to the building numbers. I watched her press the buzzer for my apartment. I didn't answer. She pressed it again, held it down this time. The buzzing sound echoed through my apartment for 10 seconds straight. Then she started pressing other buttons. Random apartments. On the third try, someone buzzed her in. I watched her disappear into the building's lobby. My apartment was on the second floor. I could hear footsteps in the stairwell. Heavy, quick footsteps. Then pounding on my door. "I know you're in there." A woman's voice. "Not Jade. You should be ashamed of yourself. That poor dog." Benny started barking. He never barks. He moved toward the door and I grabbed his collar, pulled him back. The pounding continued. Other doors in the hallway opened. I heard my neighbor Cal's voice. "Hey, what's going on out here? This apartment. The woman who lives here is abusing her dog. It's all over Instagram. I live right next door to her. Her dog's fine. You need to leave. Did you see the video? She's feeding him rotting meat. That's regular dog food, you fucking idiot. Leave before I call the cops." More pounding. "Open this door. Let me see the dog." I called 911 this time. Told them someone was trying to break into my apartment. The operator said units were on the way. Asked me to stay on the line. The pounding stopped. I checked my doorbell camera. The woman was still in the hallway, but Cal was standing between her and my door. He's a big guy, probably 6'3", and he'd positioned himself like a bouncer. 2 other neighbors had come out. Mrs. Chen from across the hall and the college kid from 2F whose name I never learned. The woman was filming them on her phone now. "You're all protecting an animal abuser. This is going to be all over the internet." "Cool," Cal said. "Film this too." He turned to face her camera directly. "You just committed trespassing and harassment. The cops are coming. Leave now or get arrested. Your choice." She left. Practically ran down the stairs. I watched through the camera as she burst out of the building and speed walked to a blue Honda Civic. She drove off before the police arrived 5 minutes later. The officers took statements from me, Cal, Mrs. Chen, and the college kid. I showed them the Instagram video and the comment from the woman. They took screenshots and said they'd file a report. One officer recognized my address from the earlier call about the dog theft. He told me to document everything and consider getting a restraining order. After they left, Cal knocked on my door. "You okay in there?" I opened it slightly, keeping the chain lock on. "Yeah, thank you for that." "No problem. Your dog's not being abused, right? Like that video is bullshit?" "Complete bullshit. She's vegan and lost her mind over regular dog food." He nodded. "Thought so. Your dog always seems happy. I hear him playing sometimes through the wall." He paused. "You might want to stay somewhere else for a few days. That video's getting a lot of attention." He was right. By midnight, the video had 200,000 views. It had been picked up by some animal rights Twitter accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers. Someone made a TikTok reaction video that got even more views. My workplace was being tagged in comments. People were calling for me to be fired. I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Benny stayed pressed against my side all night, doing his job, keeping me grounded when my chest got tight and my breathing went shallow. Sunday morning I woke up to 17 missed calls. My boss had left a voicemail. "Hey, I've been getting calls and emails about you. Something about a dog? Call me back as soon as you can." My mom had called 6 times. My sister 4. My aunt twice. Even my dad, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years since he remarried, had left a message saying he saw the video and wanted to know if I was okay. I called my boss first. She picked up on the first ring. "What the hell is going on?" she asked. No greeting. She sounded stressed. I explained everything. The dog theft, the harassment, the video. She listened without interrupting. "Is any of it true?" she asked when I finished. "No. I have vet records. Certification papers for Benny as a therapy dog. Documentation from animal control clearing me. Police reports about the theft and harassment. Send me all of it. Our social media manager flagged this yesterday. We've got people threatening to boycott the clinic if we don't fire you." I worked at a physical therapy clinic as a receptionist. We had maybe 30 patients a day. The idea of people boycotting us over this was insane. "I'll send everything now," I said. "Do that. And don't come in tomorrow. Take a few days until this dies down." She hung up. I wasn't sure if I still had a job or not. I spent the next hour gathering documents. Vet records showing Benny's perfect health, his weight charts, vaccination records, the animal control report, the police reports from the theft and the trespassing incident. I scanned everything and emailed it to my boss. Then I made the mistake of reading the comments on Jade's video again. Thousands of new ones. People were dissecting every frame, looking for evidence of abuse. Someone had zoomed in on a shot of my apartment building and claimed the windows looked suspicious. Another person said, "My face looked exactly like someone who would abuse animals." There were debates in the comments about what should happen to me. Some people wanted me arrested. Others wanted me doxxed further. A few said I should have Benny taken away and be put on a registry. A registry. For feeding my dog regular dog food. One comment thread made my stomach drop. Someone had found my Facebook profile. They'd scrolled through my photos and found one from 3 years ago, where I was eating a hamburger at a BBQ. The caption, "She eats meat and forces her dog to eat meat. Absolutely sick." They'd found my Instagram too. My private Instagram that I barely used. Someone had requested to follow me and I'd accidentally accepted it months ago during an Instagram cleaning spree. Now my personal photos were being screenshot and shared. Pictures of Benny at the park. Benny on my couch. Benny at the vet. Every image was being analyzed for signs of abuse. "Look how skinny he is," one comment said under a picture of Benny running at the dog park. He wasn't skinny. He was a healthy weight. The vet had said so at his last checkup. His eyes look sad, another said. His eyes looked like normal dog eyes. He was literally mid-play in the photo. I made my Instagram private and blocked everyone I didn't personally know. Too late. The screenshots were already circulating. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Different, unknown number. Then, another. I turned off my phone. Kelsey came home around noon. She'd seen the video. Her boyfriend had sent it to her that morning asking if that was her roommate. "This is insane," she said, sitting on the couch next to me. Benny immediately put his head in her lap. "Is there anything I can do?" "I don't know. I don't know what to do." "Have you talked to a lawyer?" I hadn't. It was Sunday, and I didn't even know where to start. Kelsey pulled out her laptop and started searching for lawyers who handled harassment and defamation cases. She found 3 in our area and emailed all of them, explaining the situation and asking about consultations. One responded within an hour. His name was Philip. He said he could meet me Monday morning. The rest of Sunday was a blur of phone calls. My mom wanted me to come stay with her. My sister wanted to fly out. My aunt offered to pay for the lawyer. Even my dad, in his awkward way, asked if I needed anything. I told him I was fine. I wasn't fine. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those comments. The threats. The woman pounding on my door. The way the video had framed me as a monster. That evening, Cal knocked again. "Hey, there's been people coming by asking about you. I've been telling them to fuck off, but you should probably know." "What kind of people?" "Young people. With phones out filming. They're taking pictures of the building." One woman tried to follow Mrs. Chen inside, but I stopped her. This was getting worse. "Thank you for watching out," I said. "Yeah. Also, the building group chat is going nuts. Someone leaked that you live here and now half the building is arguing about it. Some people want you evicted. Others are defending you. I didn't even know we had a building group chat. I'll talk to the landlord," I said. "Might want to do that soon. Apparently someone filed a complaint about you creating a safety issue." I emailed my landlord that night, explained the situation, attached all the same documents I'd sent my boss, begged him to understand this was harassment based on false information. He responded Monday morning saying he'd review everything and get back to me. Monday morning I met with Philip, the lawyer. His office was in a professional building downtown. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with round glasses and a friendly demeanor that put me somewhat at ease. I walked him through everything. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Okay, here's where we stand. The video itself is borderline. She's making claims about you that are false and provably false, which could be defamation. The fact that she's included your personal information and it's led to direct harassment strengthens your case. The theft of your dog is already criminal and you filed a report. Good. The trespassing incident, also criminal, also reported. Good. So what can I do? Several things. First, we send a cease and desist letter to Jade demanding she remove the video and stop all harassment. If she doesn't comply, we file for a restraining order. Second, we can pursue a civil suit for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and possibly conversion related to the dog theft. Third, we document everything from here on out. Every message, every comment, every incident. Build a paper trail. How long does this take? Depends on how she responds. If she removes the video and backs off, this could be resolved in a few weeks. If she fights it, we're looking at months. How much is this going to cost? He quoted me a retainer fee that made my eyes water. My aunt had offered to help, but I hated asking. Philip must have seen my face because he added, "We can also explore filing a police report for cyber harassment and see if the DA wants to pursue charges. That's free but less under your control." I paid the retainer with my credit card and tried not to think about my bank balance. Philip said he'd have the cease and desist letter drafted by end of day. I went home and found 2 more boxes on my doorstep. More vegan dog food. The note this time said, "The truth always comes out. You can't hide forever." I took photos and sent them to Philip. He added them to the file. That afternoon my boss called. "I reviewed everything you sent. I believe you. But corporate is worried about the negative attention. They want you to take the rest of the week off. Paid. While this settles down. Am I getting fired? Not right now. But I'm going to be honest. If this doesn't calm down soon, they might not have a choice. We've had patients canceling appointments because they don't want to be associated with the clinic." I wanted to scream. None of this was my fault. But I just said, "Okay, thank you for believing me." Wednesday morning, Philip called. She's not complying with the cease and desist. In fact, she posted about it. She says you're trying to silence her for exposing the truth. Of course she did. We're filing for the restraining order today. Hearing should be within 2 weeks. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you stay off social media and avoid any contact with her. That was easy. I hadn't opened Instagram in 2 days. Thursday, the hearing for the restraining order was scheduled. Philip said it was faster than usual because the judge had an opening and saw the urgency. I had to take Benny with me because I didn't trust leaving him alone. Cal agreed to watch him in the parking lot during the hearing. The courthouse was downtown. I'd never been inside before. Security made me empty my pockets and walk through a metal detector. Philip met me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Jade's here with her own lawyer, he said. Don't engage with her at all. Don't even look at her. We walked into the courtroom. Jade was sitting on the opposite side with a woman in a dark blue suit. Jade looked different than I remembered. Thinner. Her hair was pulled back tight. She was wearing a dress that looked too formal for her, like she'd borrowed it. She glanced at me when I walked in. No expression. Just a cold stare. The judge was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She looked tired. There were 3 other cases before ours. I sat there for 40 minutes watching other people's problems play out. A guy trying to get a restraining order against his neighbor. A woman trying to get one against her ex's new girlfriend. The system was full of people desperately trying to protect themselves from other people. Finally, our case was called. Philip and I stood at one table, Jade and her lawyer at the other. The judge read the petition. Miss Reeves, you're seeking a restraining order against Miss Hathaway based on harassment, theft of property, and cyberstalking. Miss Hathaway, you deny these allegations? Jade's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor. Miss Hathaway's actions were motivated by genuine concern for animal welfare. She believed the dog was being mistreated. Based on what evidence? Based on observing the dog being fed food containing animal products, which Miss Hathaway believes constitutes cruelty. The judge looked at her over her glasses. Regular dog food constitutes cruelty? In Miss Hathaway's belief system, yes. Does Miss Hathaway have any veterinary training or expertise in animal nutrition? No, Your Honor, but she has extensively researched. So she has no expertise. Does she have any evidence that the dog was actually being harmed? Malnutrition? Injury? Neglect? The act of feeding animals other animals is inherently harmful in her view. That's not what I asked. Evidence of actual harm to this specific dog. Jade's lawyer shuffled papers. We have photos of the dog food bag showing the ingredients. Photos of dog food. Does Miss Hathaway have any photos of the dog appearing malnourished or injured? No, Your Honor. Philip stood. Your Honor, if I may, we have veterinary records showing the dog is in perfect health. We have animal control records clearing my client of any abuse. We have police reports documenting Miss Hathaway's theft of the dog and subsequent harassment. We have documentation of a trespassing incident where one of Miss Hathaway's social media followers showed up at my client's apartment and attempted to force entry. I'd like to see all of that. The clerk brought our folder to the judge. She spent 5 minutes reading through it. The courtroom was silent except for papers rustling. Finally, she looked up. Miss Hathaway, did you take Miss Reeves' dog from her home without permission? Jade's lawyer nudged her. She stood. Yes, but I was protecting him. Did you refuse to return the dog when she asked? I wanted to make sure he was going to a safe environment. That's not your decision to make. Did you post a video online identifying Miss Reeves by name and location? I posted a video about animal abuse. Did that video include Miss Reeves' name and address? Pause. Yes. Did you know that this video has led to multiple people showing up at her home? I can't control what other people do. You posted her address online. You had to know what might happen. The judge looked back at the documents. Miss Hathaway, I'm granting this restraining order. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from Miss Reeves at all times. You are to have no contact with her directly or indirectly. You are to remove the video from all social media platforms within 24 hours. You are not to post any further content about Miss Reeves or her dog. Violation of this order will result in arrest. Do you understand? Jade's face went red. This is wrong.